Okay. All right. Well, why don't we start with you guys telling me how you're doing? How are things? And you can put that in the chat or you can unmute yourself. It is, Becca's having a great day. It is really important for me to know how the pace of the class is working for you. Okay? So if you are feeling behind, if you are feeling overwhelmed with work, like you don't understand, I really need that feedback from you so I can adjust my teaching so that you're getting it. Okay, awesome, Taylor. Thank you. Okay, great. Good. Okay, well, I like to hear that. Then we will keep going at this pace. Awesome. Okay, but if you feel like that changes or you need me to slow down or, you know, this concept is just hard, if you guys will communicate that with me, that will help a lot for you and for me, okay? Okay, so we're going to talk about setting today. We have talked about characterization. That's what we spent the last maybe 2 weeks working on, right? And we started by saying there were 3 aspects of characterization. There was physical, emotional, and psychological. And then how did we find out what the character was? How did we see how the character expressed those things? Well, we used the acronym STEAL for what the character says, what the character thinks, the effect the character has on other people, the character's actions, and then the character's looks, the description of the character. And then we took that a step further and we looked at the perspective of the character, all right? Why does the character think and feel and act the way that we do? We get that they're acting this way, but why are they acting this way? And we use the acronym BETTER for that. So what's the character's background? What's the character's environment? What are the character's physical traits? And then what are the character's relationships like? And we did that with the story of an hour, and then I gave you guys a couple days to work through Everyday Use, a short story by Alice Walker. So let's talk about Everyday Use, just in case that story was confusing for any of you guys. That story had 3 main characters in it. It had Mama and her 2 daughters, Maggie and Dee. And Dee had changed her name to Wangaro. And then we have the plot of the story. Essentially, this story is about Dee or Wangaro coming home for a visit and kind of what happens on that visit. So it's important always that you guys read the story on your own. And you're going to have to look for all of the details that I'm asking for. But sometimes, especially if the story is difficult to understand, there are places that will summarize the story for you or give you some insight. And I use those places myself. One of them is called Schmoop. So we're going to go there now, and it's going to give a summary of Everyday Use. Now, this is not going to take the place of reading the story. You still have to read the story to plot all of that detail for those characters. But if you find yourself in a place where you are confused about what's happening and you can't quite figure it out on your own, this is a good place to go for help. Okay, so let's just look at what Schmoop says about this story. So the story begins with the narrator hanging out in her yard, waiting for her daughter Dee, who's coming to visit. Even though we've just met the lady, we climb right inside her head and start watching one of her fantasies. No, not that kind of fantasy. She's just picturing what it would be like to reunite with Dee on his TV show. We also meet and learn a bit about the narrator's other daughter, Maggie, a shy kid with burn scars on her body. Ouch. The narrator chats with us readers some more, and we learn that she's an African-American woman who grew up in the early 20th century. Finally, Dee rolls into the driveway with the dude. Dee, who is dressed to the nines, and the dude, an Arab guy whose name is Hakima Barber, greet the narrator and Maggie with fancy Arabic and African salutations. Dee announces that she's changed her name to Wangaro, an African name. in order to fight her oppressors, and she and her mother have a little chat all about that. The narrators made a pretty big spread for the occasion, so everyone sits down to eat. As they're eating, Dee becomes totally obsessed with the butter churn in the corner of the yard that was made by her uncle. She wants to take parts of it and use them to decorate her own place. Later on, Dee goes into the house and finds two really cool handmade quilts that she's rummaging through her mother's trunk. Wow, she seems to think this place is better than IKEA, brimming with charming and quirky items that she can use to spruce up her apartment. She asks her mother if it's okay to take the quilts. Sorry, the narrator tells her, she's planning on giving them to Maggie. Dee throws an epic tantrum and tries to convince Mom that she deserves them more, but the narrator prevails, taking the quilts from Dee and giving them to Maggie. Dee lives in a huff with Hakeem, throwing out a last few condescending remarks before taking off. The narrator and Maggie watch them right away, but they don't seem too broken up over their departure. Instead, they just chill out together, relaxing in the yard. Okay, so let me stop here and ask if anybody has any questions about the story, the plot, the characters, anything at all from everyday use, because we're going to work with that a little bit more. Okay, so just to recap, we know a bit about the story everyday use, and if we need help, we can find it online. I like Schmook. I think, as you can tell, it's very conversational and easy to understand. Okay, so let's talk about setting. Y'all have probably been told, gosh, throughout your education, that setting is location. It's where something takes place. But for literature purposes, for this college level class, setting is something more. It's not just the location, it's the time of day, it's the year, the decade, the place in history where this story takes place. It's the season, it's the geography, it's the culture. So as you think about each of those things, think about how you behave and feel in each of those locations. Setting helps the author achieve their purpose. And I know we've talked about the triangle, and we've got the speaker or the writer, and the audience and the subject. So setting is a part of how the speaker tries to convince the audience to see something or think something or do something differently. Okay, what we're going to do right now is we're going to watch another AP video, and this one's about setting. About halfway through, we're going to stop the video so you guys can do a activity in the middle of it, okay? You'll find what you need for that activity in AP Classroom. Under classwork, it'll be setting, okay? So we'll start by watching the video, and then I'll stop this when we need to. All right, which means I'm going to need to mute myself. All right, so I'm going to mute myself and we will get started.
Welcome to AP Daily. Today's video is going to focus on setting, but we want to go beyond what we know about setting from, say, elementary school. So how exactly will setting be different? Well, join me today. I'm Mr. Carlos Escobar from Miami, Florida. Very excited that you've joined me, and let's dive right into the world of setting. What constitutes setting? What exactly do we mean by this? Well, in elementary school, we say it's the time and place of something, but there's more that goes into that. We're talking about the season, the geography, the culture, and also what we did learn in elementary school, which is the location of the time of day and year. So when we look at this slide and we look at these pictures, we're able to make some assumptions about setting. We see that we're at the park, or we're in New York, or on top of a mountain, we're playing in the snow, or at a fair. But what else can we derive from setting? What other understandings can we derive? Think about the way that you behave or the way that you feel in each of these different settings. And that's where we're getting into the spirit of the place and the culture of the place. And as soon as you start thinking of setting as much more than just the place, then we're going to be getting into deeper and deeper analysis. So let's practice. We're going to return to something we've been using now for a few of these videos, if you've been watching them sequentially, which is Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour. I would like for you to envision what life may have been like in the 1800s, at the turn of the century, almost the 1900s. And to help you do that, this is actually Kate Chopin's house, which amazingly we have a picture of. So this is perhaps the setting that we can imagine as we read the story. But I want us to read actively. And that's something that if you watch some of my other videos, I always want you reading with an assignment. And here's your assignment today. As you read Kate Chopin's short story, I want you to think of the different aspects of setting. Where are we? When is this taking place? And I want you to find the textual evidence that clues you in to those facts or details. And then I want you to describe that setting in your own words. I want you to look at the far right. There's another column here for function, and I have it in blue. It's essentially grayed out because we're not going to delve into this during this video, but I am giving it now to you because I want you to know that this is the goal for this course. The goal is not for us to just describe setting or identify setting, but actually discuss how that setting functions almost as a character, but definitely how it functions to impact characters, characters' motivations, and characters' perspectives. So go ahead and pause this video, read The Story of an Hour, populate this chart with as much information as you can, and then join me once you're done with that.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do. I don't know if you guys are having a hard time hearing him. He's so much quieter in these videos than he is in real life. If you are having a hard time hearing him, you can go to AP Classroom and watch the video yourself there. Okay, so let's go to our Google Classroom right here. You're going to go to classwork, and underneath it is setting. And each of you guys will have two charts, one for the story of an hour and one for everyday use. You've got a copy of both texts that you can look at as well. Right now, we're just going to do story of an hour. So you're going to pull up that chart and you're going to fill it in, okay? And remember, the story of an hour is a very short story. And I'm just looking for about 3 things. You guys have read this story before. So go back through, take a look at this, and see what you can get for the chart. I'm going to give you about 8 minutes to do so. And then we'll go back and watch the rest of the video. So I'm going to start timing right now. Isabella, we are in Google Classroom and we are doing the setting. So you're going to pull up the setting document, Story of an Hour, and pull up the text from Story of an Hour. And what you are doing, here's where it is. And what you are doing is you're going to fill in this chart, okay? What is the setting? How do you know that? Give me a quote from the text, and then you're going to describe it. Remember that setting is more than just place. It's time, it's it is location, it's culture, it's a whole bunch of different things. So you're just looking at the setting right now of the Story of an Hour. And then we're going to go back to the video. Okay, so what do I mean by description? The description is what it looks like. What does it look like? So where is she? Oh, I see, in the column. I guess I'm looking for what does that mean? This is the setting, this is the quote from the text, and maybe describe for me what that tells us, what information I'm pulling from. And remember, this is just our practice, okay? He's going to walk us through it in the video.
Hey Raiders, welcome to your first day back in person. Teachers, thank you for doing such a good job. Hope everyone's had a good experience back. If you would, teachers, please go over the QR code. Ms. Constance is making copies next to us for your all's delight. But if you would, teachers, during this period, if you could go over the QR code, that way students are prepared for lunch. Thank you.
For those of you who are coming back, you'll be scanning QR codes all the time. That's how we're going to keep track of everybody. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes. Let me give you guys another minute to wrap up your thoughts. And then we'll go back to the video and talk about, you know, the story and kind of what we got out of it. And you'll have a better idea of what it is we're looking for when we're looking at setting, okay? Maybe 30 seconds, go ahead and finish up whatever thought you're on. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to the video and he's going to talk about what he saw in the story and maybe you guys saw some of the same stuff. Oh, I need to mute myself. I'm so sorry. That would be
Oh, welcome back. If you've done the work, then you just hit play again. And I went ahead and I populated it myself, the chart, with some information. And like I've told you before, you may have different information, and that's okay. The story is so rich that we may be pulling different quotes, but eventually we're going to land at the same point of analysis. So where are we? What are the settings that I have chosen? Well, I chose to focus on the fact that we are in the Mallard home. This seems to be a pre-21st century story. I know that I gave you the date, but imagine if we didn't have that date. I think there's enough textual evidence that can uh, uh, guide us towards understanding that it has to be at the end of the 1800s or the early 1900s. And we also know that it's taking place during spring. You see the quotations that I'm using to to justify what I'm labeling as the setting of the story, but it's in the description. It's the place where I'm able to talk about why that setting might be important or how I arrive at understanding the the description of that setting that I think we're gonna have more fun. So we're in the home. Mrs. Mallard is in her room. The description of what she sees from her window, however, makes it seem as if she is only now observing the world around her. It's interesting. Go back and look at the story. We get all these descriptions of the trees and the birds. This is her bedroom. She's seen it before. So why are we being told of this as if it's a new discovery? We're in pre-21st century. We're probably, I don't think she was being futuristic here. So I think that we're probably at the end of the 1800s in this short story. And we know because of the telegram, many of us take trains, but perhaps we're going to use the train as an example of why the story takes place such a long time ago. And we are told that it is spring. And interestingly, we're given the phrase new spring life. Again, focusing on life in a short story, which essentially is about a man's death or the news of a man's death. The setting is juxtaposing that fact. We're in spring. We're focusing on life. After all, Mrs. Mallard is gaining a new life for herself. So what should we take away through this video? When we talk about setting, we're not just talking about where and when. We're talking about all of the cultural and ethical aspects of that time period that inform the society, inform the characters, and thereby we're going to understand character motivation, why the conflicts arise, and why the resolution might be shocking or not. So the key question for us is, how do details in a text convey or reveal one or more aspects of a setting? And I put in red all these aspects of setting that I want you to think about each time that you're having to populate the chart. These charts that I've given you, keep them in your notebook, keep them handy, and use them all the time because they're going to organize your thinking and help you write cogent, analytical essays in the future. Thank you so much.
Okay. So, do you guys have any questions about the setting or about what he just did? You'll see that there are some universal settings that that kind of hold true for all stories. For example, if we look at, on my slide, if it's storming, if it's raining, any idea what that setting is telling us? Think about in movies, TV shows, or stories you've read, what's happening when it's raining, or if the location is a very rainy, dark place. It's sad. Yep. What else could it mean besides sad? Anger. Yes. Danger, bad decisions. Becca, we're not worried about function of setting yet. That's a skill we're going to get to in another month or two. Right now, we just want to make sure we understand the setting before we understand the function of it. Okay, so that's what kind of rain and clouds tell us. Spring, that setting, that time of year, spring, that also means something. Think about what happens in spring with flowers and nature. What does spring do? New life, absolutely, Isabella. So spring is about growth, new opportunities, reinventing yourself. So when you see a rainstorm or a storm of any kind, or when you see spring, those should kind of be red flashing lights to you guys that there's something significant here. Why is the author having this be the setting? So you should definitely be noticing that. Okay, you guys are doing great. What I'd like us to do is I would like us to add this information into our interactive notebook. So here's how we do that. We go to our Google Drive, okay, and we type in the search bar interactive, okay? You're going to go to Google Drive. You get there by going drive.google.com. That'll pull up your Google Drive, which is like your filing cabinet. And then you're going to type in interactive notebook. And just keep in mind that I have a bunch of these because, I don't know why, because I make them in all of my classes, okay? But I'm looking for the one that says Miss Ritchie's AP Lit Interactive Notebook, and I'm going to pull that up. And I hope you guys are with me. All right. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit to where we've actually already put in text. And if we look on page 6, we should have character. Page 7, we should have style and perspective. So I'm going to go on to page 8, and I'm going to put setting. And what I did is I took the text box, so it's the T with the square around it, and I drew it down, and I typed in, when looking at settings, consider, and then I made bullet points into these 3 dots, and I picked bullet points, and I put in location, time of day, year, season, geography, and culture. You're just going to want one of these, okay? So you can pick where it goes, but I'm showing you how I did it, okay? So I'm going to leave the one on the left-hand side of the page, and I'm going to end up deleting the right one. If you are using your own notebook, that's also fine. Just make sure you have this information in there. It would be a very heavy load to have to remember all of this stuff. So we don't. We write it down. And then as we're moving through the year and we need to look at character or we need to look at setting, we flip back in our notebook and review those notes, and then we're ready to look at it. We don't have to memorize this stuff, okay? But if you can't flip back and look at it if you don't have it in your notebook. So go ahead and put it in your notebook right now. Okay, who needs more time? Anybody need more time? Okay, sure. I will give you guys some more time. Okay, how are we doing now? Do we still need more time? Okay, so I want us to, yes, it's still an analysis, Aaliyah. These are all analysis tools we will use. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is I want you to scroll up to where it says Table of Contents. For me, that's on page 3. And for my analysis, I've got some things in there. I've got character, I've got style, right? I've got perspective, and now I have setting. So I want you to add that list. That way, later on in the year, when you don't remember, you've got it right here. I know I took notes on that. Where was that? So it'll be here in your table of contents. So we've done character, style, perspective, and setting. Now that I have these, I can take each one of these words and link it right to the page where it is. Let me show you how to do that. Let's do style. My notes on style are on page 7. I can tell because I have this view of my entire presentation on the left-hand side. So style is on page 7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the word style, and I'm going to right-click on it. And one of my options, I've got cut, copy, paste, delete, all of that stuff. One of them is link. I'm going to click link. Now I can put a link here, but what I want to do is I want to link to a slide in this presentation. I want to link to slide 7, to page 7. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click slide 7 and apply. And so if I were in present mode with this page and I clicked style, it would take me right there, right to that page. Okay, let's try that again. I'm in my table of contents, which for me is page 3. I'm going to highlight the word perspective. I'm going to right click on that word and I'm going to make it a link. And I want it to link to page 7. That's where my perspective notes are. So I want to link it to a slide in this presentation. I come down to slide 7 and click apply. For setting, I do page 8. Okay, does anybody need me to go over that again? All right, this just makes your notebook useful for you, okay? All right, so let's finish up. Here's your assignment. You're going to return to our story everyday use, and you're going to complete the setting chart for everyday use. You're thinking about how details in the text convey or reveal one or more aspects of setting. And our aspects of setting are what we just wrote down in our reader's writer's notebook. It's the location, the time of day, the year, the season, the geography, the culture, okay? Now, I'm not asking you to find all of those things. I'm asking you to find 3 things and fill it out in a chart. When you're done, you'll submit it, okay? The story of an hour was practice. Everyday use will be graded, okay? So do your best. If I feel like you're not getting it, we'll talk and then you'll get to do it again, okay? Our goal is to get this learning not to get it perfect the first time.